So, welcome to part 4 of the Minds of the Future. My name is Anna Sjöström, and I'm the host of this roundtable discussion between brilliant young minds and Professor Sir David MacMillan, Nobel Laureate in Chemistry 2021. And this is taking place at the Nobel Prize Museum in Stockholm during the Nobel Week 2022. A central consequence of the climate crisis is the decrease in biodiversity. In 2019, it was reported that 1 million species face extinction, many of them within decades only. The speed at which extinction takes place today is already at least tens or hundreds of times higher than it has averaged over the past 10 million years. Oh, heavy numbers. With regards to this issue, the IPBES chair, Sir Robert Watson, stated that the health of ecosystems on which we all and other species depend on is deteriorating more rapidly than ever. We are eroding the very foundations of our economies, livelihoods, food security, health, and quality of life worldwide. Oof. This is really important topics. We should try to spread some light on this. My question to you in this panel is, how do you think STEM research can help to decrease the rate of which biodiversity is declining? So I'm turning to Jordan.
Yes, so I think STEM is really the key to decreasing the rates that we see biodiversity loss. Not only that, but advancements in technology. So with advancements in technology, when we go to look for specific reasons why certain species may be threatened, you can't always just assume that it's the same thing for every species that's under threat. So with new technological advancements like drones and satellites, we're able to, say for migratory species, we can actually monitor them in a non-invasive way, where in the past we weren't always able to do that sort of thing. But I mean, I'm an Aussie, so maybe I'm a little bit biased. And whenever I think of, a lot of disruption to natural ecosystems, I think of the Great Barrier Reef. So, with the climate crisis that we have and the warming of our ocean waters, we face these mass coral bleaching events, which just disrupt an entire ecosystem. The reef systems, they're home to 25% of all marine life. So when we lose those marine ecosystems, there's just mass loss of life, or life that's just displaced in our oceans. So I think what STEM can do for us in Australia, but also a worldwide effort, shows a good example of is certain pathways. So they call them, for coral, there's assisted gene flow, which is where they take a coral from like a warmer water species and they mix breed it with a colder water species. And they embed them into a threatened reef that's currently colder water, but as that water starts to increase, it inherits that warm water property of one of the parents. So it creates a more robust reef system that can ultimately, if the water keeps getting warmer and warmer, we're only buying more time, but it buys more time to begin with anyway, so we can really address the climate crisis. So I think STEM and technological advancements, without them going hand in hand, we won't be able to address the rate that biodiversity is lost.
Meda, do you agree with this, or do you have some other thoughts?
When we talk about various animals, bacteria, each of these species and organisms are working in an ecosystem which is balanced. And that balance is a support of our life, like life that was before humans, right? And it's important to understand that if something goes extinct, people cannot create it, or people cannot recreate it. People only can create a new one. So with this in mind, we should try to not forget, and with STEM research, really see the value of what we have and the problems that it addresses. STEM research always provides some sort of a way, or some sort of a direction to which we could follow for the better, and that gives us like future solution for today's problems. And with STEM research works, we give a lot of knowledge. We get knowledge for today, and their scientist who does this research gives us hope for tomorrow.
Well, that's lovely. So balance in the ecosystem is really an important topic when you talk about extinction and loss of biodiversity, of course. Asmi, do you want to further develop the discussion?
Yeah. At a broad level, of course, we can use things, concepts like AI, statistical modeling, and remote sensing to mitigate a lot of these problems. One thing in particular is satellite imagery. I've looked at that before to more accurately map poverty across the globe, but we can also apply that to a lot of different scenarios. And one of them is providing greater information on exactly where and pinpointing exactly where species are at the greatest risk of extinction, and using ML on crowdsourced environmental data is also another option. Solar-powered devices to map ecosystems long term, and I think, Jordan, you mentioned some drone-based systems for warning signs of poaching or unwanted human presence, things like that. One thing that's sometimes overlooked is emotions. A lot of the times, I think well-timed or well-placed pictures are enough to stir up feelings in humans of, oh, we should make a change for this purpose. And I've seen a lot of really impactful images. There's just elusive animals in the wild that we wouldn't have captured otherwise if this long-term camera hadn't been in place. And then one other thing is climate change not only affects animals, there's also plants involved, and that creates food insecurity. And I think creating some type of models to better track this and create something to assess financial losses for insurance companies and for farmers alike would be a good strategy in the agriculture sector.
So you see many of the new technologies that are applicable to address the topic of loss of biodiversity.
Yeah.
What do you say, Benjamin?
Yeah, some great points there. I think you guys have covered how we've improved technology recently and how it's been applied to the ecosystem and everything. And there's some pretty damning stats that you read out at the start there, and it's kind of, I don't know, I've kind of become used to hearing, oh, we've lost this species, we've lost, another one, and it we're kind of numb to it, I think, at the moment. But it's not all negative. There are some fantastic success stories of how biodiversity and how the earth can recover really well. It's a great healer. There's a really good example. In the past decade, there was a guy called Alan Savoy. I'd recommend going on YouTube and having a look at this. But he reinstated the status quo in the large savannas in Africa, where he introduced mass herding back into the into the ecosystem, and the change was rapid. It was a barren landscape, and he introduced mass herding back in, and the biodiversity increased within years. And then it'd been ruined for decades, and within a few years we see these great changes. And I think that we should have some more positive affirmation towards what we can do when we enact these changes. And as long as we act assertively rather than aggressively, trying not to create polarization with anyone, then, we can use these success stories to inspire people to, create more.
Yeah, that's a very important point. I think also the importance that you mentioned about images, that we actually see what is going on, and then also to create the engagement and emotions to do something. But then also to share the success stories, and that things are not only getting darker, but some things are also getting better, and we are finding solutions. David, do you think emerging technologies, or do you see something in chemistry or in your field that you would say would be applicable to this topic?
It's a very interesting one, and again, it's not a topic that is my main area. But however, I think the part that as humans, we can all understand that, this reduction, these dramatic numbers that you talk about, this is a sort of canary in the coal mine situation where it's telling us what's happening to our planet in real time. Even if it's ahead of what potentially could happen to humans, it's telling us about what's kind of happening to the planet. So it's a warning. But what you heard there was also two different stories about how you can start to think about innovation for the future. And one of the things that it always comes back to is every time we face problems as a race, it also provides opportunities. It provides opportunities for us to step up and think about how we can start to innovate and think differently or change what we're doing. And I think one of the sort of real moments that we have to think about right now, especially for young people or people in high school, is what can they do? What can they think about? What research paths, what science can they think about? We can start to have some kind of impact or think about this in a different way, whether it's climate change directly, biodiversity correctly. But these are moments where it provides opportunities to think about how we can change it and fix it and move towards in a positive direction.
So we know that this is a question that many young people around the world are concerned about. So does any one of you here have some for the viewers, that if you want to engage within STEM research and you want to address this topic, how do you find where to put your engagement, or which topics to select to work on, or what to study if you want to go into STEM, or you want to?
May I add, when you talked about great stories like the ones that succeeded, I remember that in my home country we suffer from deforestation, and forests are not only the wood, but it's also the home, the place where all the animals and species, bacteria, organisms live. And there was this year a great success. I would say that one of the STEM researcher, she did look into the woods and found the mushroom that is like an indicator. It shows that this forest has the great flora for all the upcoming organisms that could live there. And with this research, they bought out the forest, and they are put it in the safe zone so that it wouldn't be destroyed. And with the research, we caught up with the extinction, and we can prevent it.
That's a great story. Jordan.
I think when a young scientist is trying to address what they want to research or what they want to look towards, if you're thinking about biodiversity loss and relating it to climate change, I think you should think back to some of the grassroots of where climate change is, being driven from. So ultimately, chemical pollution is kind of pushing climate change, but chemical pollution is more than just a carbon dioxide, methane beast. It's, there's many classes of chemical pollutants, and I'd recommend reading a book called A Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, and she talks about DDT, so a pesticide that decimated bird populations. And I think you might find that biodiversity loss isn't just coming from climate change itself. It's all kind of spawning from chemical pollution and this misuse or malpractice in regards to our handling of chemicals, and sometimes the production of chemicals that we don't understand before we start using them. So there's so many chemicals used on the global market where only a fraction of them are either characterized for, in public domain, or if they are characterized, a lot of the time they're hidden as industry secrets and stuff like that. But a lot of these chemicals can affect biodiversity as well. And I think pesticides are the perfect example. We engineer them to control and destroy life. So who's to say it's not going to affect a much larger ecosystem than what we're trying to target?
I think that's a beautiful also link to, because at least in Sweden we see that there are not so many young people who choose chemistry. Actually in the university they have almost problems to get people to go into chemistry studies. Maybe then, as you said, then point out that chemistry is really linked to climate change and the loss of biodiversity. So if you are a young person engaged in this, maybe chemistry is a field that you do you have a word for for the viewers.
Yeah, very strong words. And actually, Jordan's points are really, really good. I think one of the parts which is really most difficult being involved with chemistry is the public relations around the word chemistry. I'll give you examples. So, for example, we think of chemistry, often society thinks of chemicals, we think of smokestacks, we think of nasty molecules which are impacting biodiversity, right? Because of ways that things in which chemistry is used. But the problem is that we forget that chemistry underlies everything, absolutely everything. So all the beneficial things that are happening around us happen because of chemistry. One of my favorite parts to tell people is when they take a medicine, they always think a doctor or a medic invented that medicine. They didn't. It was a chemist. So chemists impact our world in so many positive ways. And as chemists, we're terrible at publicizing all the good ways. But we know that all the negative ways will come out, as they should come out, and things like that in terms of these sort of nasty sort of chemicals. And the word chemical itself is viewed as you hear the word chemical, you don't like it. You don't think, oh, chemical, I'd love some chemical. So what we have to do, it's interesting in America and in other places, we've started to actually just use different words. And you might think, is that fair? But we talk about, for example, catalysis. And catalysis changes our world in so many positive ways, but the society doesn't actually have a negative response to it. And it's a kind of shame that we have to do that, but I think we almost have to do that because there is such a negative connotation just around chemistry, even though it is an unbelievably important. And climate sciences and biodiversity and in healthcare and materials, all these things as they're solved, and I'm very optimistic, I believe they will be solved. They're going to be solved because of chemistry. And it really is true, and we can't avoid that. And they're also going to be solved because of catalysis. But in able to get society behind us, we might have to call it catalysis instead of chemistry. But it is inordinately important that we don't walk away from an area that is so important to the human race.
That's fantastic words, I must say. And you're, of course, not objective regarding the chemistry as a solution to the world's problem.
Yeah.
But for you who is looking at this, I think really see chemistry as a way to really go into a variety of questions, and you can also come into solving climate crisis and loss of biodiversity. So I think that was wonderful final words in this topic, and thank you all for contributing to this, to making a better and brighter future through science, not at least chemistry. And to our viewers, you can continue this conversation on how to make our future more sustainable and brighter by downloading our free of use appendix on the website to bring to your classroom, science club, or family or friends dinner. Thank you so much.